One of the biggest complaints from so-called hardcore boxing fans, we want undisputed champions. But what happens when we get them? Let's look through modern day history, if you like. They're saying it took Canelo 11 months to become an undisputed champion because he had 4 fights in 11 months, all in that weight class. And that is true, but it actually took him 16 years to become an undisputed champion as a pro. Mike Tyson debuted in March of 1985 and was a champion by November 1986. It took him 20 months as a pro to become a heavyweight champion. 9 months after that, Mike becomes undisputed champion. It took him 29 months as a pro to become an undisputed heavyweight champion. And he won all the belts in the ring. It will never happen again in my lifetime. I don't believe so. Then I have to listen to people in this generation talking about Mike Tyson's resume, and anytime he stepped up, he lost. This is the undisputed champion. This is how we treat undisputed champions. But I want to focus on this era, the 4-belt era. Bernard Hopkins, first 4-belt undisputed champion, period. He did it at middleweights. How much credit did Bernard get from the wider mainstream media and public when he did it? I always used to hear he was a boring fighter, he's boring, and this and that. How much credit did he get for doing it? How much credit did Bud Crawford get for it? What about Josh Taylor, how he was treated recently in America? What about Usyk when he became undisputed at cruiser, winning the WBSS tournament, like Josh Taylor? With Bud, they're trying to say he didn't fight anybody to become undisputed champion. The same with Usyk, there's nobody at cruiser. And now they're trying to say the same thing with Canelo. Now, every successful fighter has to deal with hate. They have to deal with opposition who oppose their accomplishments. It doesn't matter who it is. Every successful fighter. So if you don't like Canelo, this is not no Canelo fan recruitment video. But already I'm hearing them overtones of, oh, where's the black fighters he fought at 168? Well, you tell me where they are. Is that what we're talking about? Well, he had his opportunity to put his name in the mix against David Benavidez. Benavidez was ready, and it was Charlo who backtracked. He's talking about he wants to fight Canelo at 168, but yet you want to fight Benavidez at 160. Why not fight him at 168 in the division that you're planning to fight Canelo in? He's a ducker. The whole notion that Benavidez, a full-grown man, is going to sweat down 8 pounds to fight this guy here. It's not like he's the cash cow of the sport or anything that David would do something as drastic as that. Lose 8 pounds to fight this guy who's not even a pound-for-pound fighter. Come on, man. He didn't even say, let's fight at 164. You drop 4, I come up 4. No. You've got to come down 8 pounds. Even his twin brother was roasting him for ducking an alleged offer to fight Canelo from Oscar De La Hoya. And you got Danny Jacobs. He's fighting at 168 right now. Canelo's already beat him at 160. Nobody is calling for that, are they? Unless Danny can fight his way into a mandatory position. Then the other guy is Andrade, who Canelo did duck at 160. But like I say, it's modern day greatness. There's going to be a couple of ducks on there, even for a modern day great like Canelo. And he ducked Andrade, because Andrade is skilled. He's a southpaw, long and rangy. Canelo don't like the style matchup. He tried to say that he hasn't fought anybody, he's boring, but he didn't like the style matchup. So you could argue Canelo cherry-picked 168 to go for undisputed over 160. He didn't like that Andrade fight. And there's no one at 168 who can box like Andrade, and that includes Caleb Plant, who I'm hearing people say that he's a better boxer than Andrade. I don't believe he is. Now, I don't want to hear no Canelo fans in the comment section defending everything Canelo does like he's perfect. He's not perfect, but he's doing more than everybody else. I mean, Bud Crawford is accusing Canelo of getting all the fights that he wants, but I have to prove that I'm number one? Well, the facts are Crawford does have to prove that he's number one. How did Canelo get all the fights he wanted? He crossed over to the other side of the street where Terence didn't, and I'm not saying Terence should have did that. They should have met in the middle, him and Spence. But he's managed to get Sean Porter to cross over the other side of the street. Why? Because he hasn't got a belt, and the PBC will offer him up now. Al's took some big L's with Wilder losing the trilogy fight with Tyson Fury and Canelo wiping out Plant. So he needs Porter to pull off a miracle. He really does. Crawford's got no business talking about Canelo being able to get fights and he can't get them. Like, why did he resign with ARUM? ARUM is the guy who's been putting you out there saying I could buy expensive mansions and stuff instead of paying you these purses. I like Terence Crawford, one of my favourite fighters, but I gotta keep it real. Canelo became a free agent. He left his promotional company, took them to court, and became a free agent. This enabled him to fulfill his goal to become undisputed at 168. Why didn't Bud become a free agent the last time his top rank contract ran out? Why didn't he do that? Terence Crawford next week gets a chance to join Canelo, Fury, Taylor, Usyk, Ugas, in who really performed at elite level this year. A lot of people are asking, can he stop Sean Porter? I don't think he can. I don't think he can. I think he can get a knockdown, maybe 2 knockdowns against Sean. Maybe he's catching Sean at the right time. Sean's last fight was against Formella 2020, who we outpointed. It could be argued that Conor Benn looked better against Formella. And before that, Sean was beaten by Errol Spence. Now, a lot of people are going to put a lot of stock into Terence Crawford's knockout ratio at 147. This is the 5th defense of that WBO title. And he's won all of his title fights at welter by stoppage. But the level of the opposition could be questioned. Destroyed Jeff Horn straight after Horn's victory over Pacquiao. Got to Jose Benavidez late. Amir Khan was past his best. The Kavaliauskas stoppage was good, but he found himself on the canvas. And Kell Brook was past his best as well. Porter's been fighting the likes of Ugas, Danny Garcia, all good fighters. Errol Spence. I think Crawford will win, but it might be a fight where he doesn't get the credit he might have wanted to get. A lot of people are expecting him to be the first to knock Porter out, but Porter got a good jab, very aggressive, good footwork. I believe it's going to be one of them fights where Porter exceeds his expectations, pushes Crawford all the way. Could be pretty tight on the scorecards, but Crawford should pull it out. Should be a good fight. Should be a good fight. Porter might be the only 147-pounder in the world capable of denying Bud the space he needs to get off them lethal combinations. Power shots. I have no idea what Canelo signed with the PBC. But as for Canelo fighting on Showtime, again with the PBC, is contingent on the numbers this fight does on pay-per-view. I mean, 300,000, 400,000 is not going to cut it. They've had to shell out $50 million in purses. Do they want to keep doing that just to keep Canelo on Showtime? Nah. Taking on fighters that he's expected to beat, like Plant, he'll be an overwhelming favourite against Charlo, Benavidez. He's going to have to be hitting 900,000, a million pay-per-view buys for this to be sustainable. Will he hit them numbers against Plant? Well, we'll see. We'll see. If he does, then the PBC are in business. Canelo done 1.3 for the second fight against Triple G, and that's when Triple G was hot. Caleb has never been as hot as Triple G. So you tell me if this fight's going to do between 8 and 1.3. Now, I'm not going to be too ruthless on this one, but Al got the result he deserved in the ring and outside the ring for not building up his fighters for when they eventually are going to take on a cash cow. They couldn't meet Canelo in the middle. They couldn't get a 2-way rematch clause. That's all in Canelo's favour, including the Hennessy. Build your fighters up for big events inside and outside the ring. Build them up. Negotiations for Canelo versus Charlo and Benavidez are all going to be one-sided in Canelo's favour, or the fights don't happen. Simple as that. And nobody's going to be saying he's ducking them guys because they're not a blip on the Richter scale in mainstream boxing. They haven't done anything. You know, whatever numbers Canelo does with Caleb Plant, Plant would have contributed nothing into themselves. Nothing. Literally nothing. He's never done pay-per-view before. He told Canelo to go out and get the belts and come back and see me. Well, Canelo did that, and he's won the fight. And no matter what the pay-per-view does, if it does 100,000, Canelo's check is still clearing for 40 mil. That's Al Heyman's fault. You want to do big events, your fighters have to contribute in making that a big event. So all them PBC fighters and all the talk about, Al's getting his fighters TV money and he skimming a little off the top. That don't work against Canelo. That don't work against Canelo. That don't work when you're going up against a big machine, a big corporate machine. Canelo doesn't need Charlo or Benavides. He's undisputed already. Caleb only got that $10 million purse because he had something Canelo wanted. Canelo don't need no WBC franchise title to do what he wants. Fight who he wants when he wants. Under what circumstances he wants, to a degree. You don't want to go too far down that road where it will detract from his victories. You don't want to go too far down that road. Too many weight clauses and whatever. In Britain, I've seen Barry Jones work on Channel 5, I believe, Sky, BT. I don't think he's currently got a gig right now, but he's able to move and operate between different networks with nobody saying, well, where's your loyalty and all this shit here. I see Deontay Wilder doing punditry for Sky when AJ fought Klitschko and he was a PBC fighter. See, the thing is, in life, is what goes around comes around. And I realize now that your tribalism should never outweigh your intelligence to make good business decisions. You see, the PBC and whatever network, Showtime or Fox, would do their broadcasts and say, these are the best welterweights. And you don't see Bud Crawford in the section where if you go to DAZN, they're covering all fighters, no matter what network they're on, they're covering everybody. Barack and the other guy, they cover everybody. So now, you have your guy from the PBC, Sean Porter, going over to Top Rank to fight Terence Crawford. Now, even though Top Rank are doing the pay-per-view, are you telling me you don't want this pay-per-view to do huge numbers because you're on the PBC? Surely you do, because Sean comes back to you and in theory could bring back thousands and thousands of pay-per-view buyers back to watch his fights, back to watch 147 fights, back to watch PBC fights at any weight class. But have they potentially hurt the pay-per-view numbers by excluding Bud from the shoulder programs and when the pundits are talking on the actual cards? How does that help? It's not like we're in this universe where you're not going to come into contact with different promoters and different fighters, like you're isolated. This ain't the UFC. So it's counterproductive. It's like Eddie Hearn, he was saying that the PBC wouldn't let him in at the weigh-in for the Canelo fight. They wouldn't let him in there and they wouldn't let him get access to other areas of the promotion. He was saying they didn't want him there. In Eddie's eyes, he believes that if the shoe was on the other foot, for instance, if Leonard Ellaby followed one of the PBC fighters to an Eddie Hearn promotion, taking on a Matchroom fighter, that he would allow Ellaby to help drive up the promotion. That's what Eddie would do, and I believe Eddie would do that, but in all truth, they're not going to let Eddie feel comfortable in what they're doing. They're never going to do that, because Eddie is a threat to the PBC, a threat to Bob Arum. I mean, Bob Arum is really taking it personal. Eddie said that he was part of the Matchroom Top Rank promotion where Michaela Meyer defeated Hamadouche. He said he was there, and Bob Arum barely spoke to him, and then the next day he was making a video talking about fuck Eddie Hearn. Arum was saying screw Eddie about Joshua's decision to step aside and let Tyson Fury fight Usyk, and he's pissed about that, saying Joshua will make the decision on his own terms. It's got fuck all to do with Eddie. No, it's got a lot to do with Eddie. Got a whole lot to do with Eddie. Eddie has been pivotal in steering Joshua's career from the start. He didn't jump on like Bob after he saw what Fury did to Wilder in the first fight. I mean, where was Bob Arum when Fury beat Klitschko? Why didn't you jump on the bandwagon then? Some 3 years previous to when Fury fought AJ. Why didn't he jump on then? What did Eddie expect though? Why do you think Bob is so angry? You've got a fighter contracted to Top Rank to Bob Arum fighting on a DAZN card in a couple of weeks, defending all of them lightweight belts. It's going to be somewhat of an event. Why do you think Bob's pissed? He told Eddie not to bid on the fight. I have a feeling because Eddie disobeyed him, Bob went along with this arbitration. Say, yo, screw them. We're not going to give them this undisputed fight now. Screw them. That's what I believe. I wonder if Bob was to ask if he could get access to the event. Lopez versus Kambosos, what Eddie would say. Would you let Bob on there to drive up the numbers, Eddie? Probably not. Probably not, because he's your rival. He dislikes you, you dislike him. The relationship was always edgy, a bit fractured, but it was amicable enough that they could work together. But right now, it's unraveling at a fast rate. So apparently Andre Ward, referring to Canelo, said he didn't cherry pick his opponents, insinuating that Canelo is cherry picking. Okay, Ward didn't cherry pick his opponents. What he did do was when pivotal fights came up in either weight class he fought in, super middle or light heavy, he checked out. Now I'm not saying he was scared to fight Lucian Bute, but the money was in Canada, where Bute was a draw. And he let Carl Froch back in the game. We're going to get to Carl Froch in a minute. Froch took Lucian Bute's IBF title after Andre Ward beat Froch. There was also Robert Stieglitz out there, who had the WBO title, and Ward didn't clear up the division. He moves up to light heavy. Controversial win over Kovalev, beats him in the rematch. 1 belt to go against Adonis Stevenson, and Ward retires. Now, the whole notion that he's going to accuse Canelo of being a cherry picker, well, what's the difference in him cherry picking the 168-pounders over Andrade and you retiring rather than going for undisputed at 175? What's the difference? Ward has also said he could beat Anthony Joshua, and he hasn't come back and proved that. Why don't you make a comeback and challenge Canelo if you've got these issues? Same with Carl Froch. He was talking about how he would have beat Golovkin, and now he's talking about he would have been too big and too this and that for Canelo. Ward and Froch talk too much. Talk way too much. Your careers are over. Joe Calzaghe responded to Froch's claim that he could beat Canelo and said, yeah, it's easier said than done. Joe's a lot more humble. Then we go to the dumbest comment of the week. Somebody commented on the press conference for Chisora Parker 2 and the undercard saying, the card is average at best. There's no 50-50 fights on there. The game hasn't changed and has remained very much the same. No 50-50 fights on this card of all cards you're going to point out? Vlasov versus Boatsi is not a 50-50, and Gongora versus Richards is not actually perhaps a 60-40 in Gongora's favor. You could actually say the same for Vlasov versus Boatsi. What the fuck are you talking about? On Saturday, Kid Galahad takes on Kiko Martinez for the IBF featherweight title, and Terry Harper takes on Alicia Baumgardner for the WBC super featherweight title. Golden Boy, is this their last card on DAZN? I don't know. It's a good fight though. Gabe Rosada versus Jaime Munguia. That's a very good fight. Rosado coming off one of his best victories against Beck. Jaime, he's becoming a crowd favorite with his crowd-pleasing style, developing a little resume now. David Benavidez is fighting on the PBC in one of them fights that is not going to build up his profile to negotiate with Canelo. Let's just say that. Now, it's unlikely we will ever see a Derek Chisora Anthony Joshua fight. Joshua's looked up to Derek from when he was an amateur, just started boxing, when they were both working under the tuition of Don Charles up at Finchley. But when Joseph Parker said he's not going to fight Tyson Fury because it's his brother, I mean, it's not like Joseph met Tyson when he was young and he was inspired by Tyson then. No, he was a grown professional athlete, probably a world champion. Now he's saying he won't fight Tyson Fury? Joseph... Anyway, let's not get into that, but if the boot was on the other foot and Joseph Parker had the WBC belt and Tyson was a ranked contender, do you think Tyson would be saying, oh, I'm not going to fight Joseph because he's my brother? No, business is business. He'd be calling him all types of names. What did he call him, actually, after Anthony Joshua beat Joseph Parker? Didn't he call him a bootleg version of himself? So what's he hoping for, a shot at the winner at AJ and Usyk? While he looks on in awe at Tyson Fury, wishing he was him. Parker just has strange energy for a heavyweight boxer. Always has.
Anyway, I'm Joseph Parker, your biggest fan. Hit me back just to chat. I'm a Tyson Fury stan. My tea's gone cold, I'm wondering why.
I hope Derek gets this guy out of there. It just annoys me. Not much of a surprise that the British bronze medalist at super heavyweight Frazer Clarke has signed with 258 management, the Anthony Joshua's management team. It's going to take a while for them bad cuts he suffered, I believe, in the quarterfinal to heal up, so we're going to be waiting a little while for his debut. done an interview with Unrivaled Boxing. He didn't commit to say who was going to be training him. I have a feeling it's going to be Rob McCracken. I have a feeling. Could be. We'll see. Conor Benn and Katie Taylor are going to share top billing on December the 11th. Katie's opponent is still to be announced, while Conor is going to take on Chris Algieri, former 140-pound champion. I think it's a good step up for Conor. He's still very young. A lot of people are saying, Eddie is keeping him away from this guy and that guy, when Eddie's came out and said he's a few fights away from taking on the likes of David Avanesyan. He's saying it. He's in the development stage. Eddie's telling you that. They keep bringing up that he turned down some offer to fight Avanesyan for the European title because they don't feel he's ready. They want to take on some of these older former fringe contenders, former faded champion like Algieri. They want to take on these guys, get a little bit of an experience without too much of a risk of an upset, and keep developing the guy. I get that because all the people saying that they want to see him step up, they want to see him get beaten basically. And I get that. Now if Conor was running his mouth saying he could beat champions and contenders right now, you'd be justified in saying, well, he needs to step up. But his promoter is telling you he's not ready yet. He's a couple more fights away from some of them fights people are saying he should take. And I think that's fair enough. So Kell Brook said Amir Khan has finally signed to deliver the biggest fight in boxing. I don't know about that, Kell, but it's definitely going to be a curiosity. It's going to be a massive fight. So he's revealed that he signed a contract to finally fight Amir Khan. Now this is a feud that's ran for several years. Most of you know the backstory, so I don't have to rehash it like that. Now Eddie Hearn, he said he's not interested in that fight no more. Eddie more wanted to use Amir or Kell as a stepping stone for the likes of Conor Benn. But with Eddie taking his name out of the hat and Sky, in the absence of Eddie Hearn, looking for some big events, they will screen the fight next year. It's going to be on Sky Sports box office. It's going to be pay-per-view. Manchester Arena. Brook revealed earlier this week that he had signed his contract while it was understood Khan signed his several weeks ago. It's going to be a catchweight at, I imagine, over 147. I don't think both men at this stage of life will want to make 147. Khan is 35 years of age, same age as Kell Brook. I will just say this. If it doesn't happen this time, I hope Khan and Brook do us all a favour and don't ever talk about fighting each other again.